All right. Chapter 2 of the wonders of natural magic displayed in a variety of sympathetic and occulted operations throughout the families of animals, plants, metals, and stones treated of miscellaneously. The wonders of animal magic we fully to display under the titles of magnetism. But here we hasten to investigate by what means, instruments, and effects we must apply actives to passives to the producing of rare and uncommon effects, whether by actions, amulets, allegations, and suspensions, or rings, papers, unctions, suffumagations, allurements, sorceries, enchantments, images, lights, sounds, or the like. Therefore, we begin with things more simple. If any one shall, with an entire new knife, cut asunder a lemon using words expressive of hatred, contumely, or dislike against any individual, the absent party, though at an unlimited distance, feels a certain inexpressible and cutting anguish of the heart, together with a cold chilliness and failure throughout the body. Likewise, of living animals, if a live pigeon be cut through the heart, it causes the heart of the party intended to affect with a sudden failure. Likewise, fear is induced by suspending the magical image of a man by a single thread. Also, death and destruction by means similar to these, and all these from a fatal and magical symphony. Likewise, of the virtues of simple animals as well as manual operations, of which we shall speak more anon. The application of hare's fat pulls out a thorn. Likewise, anyone may cure the toothache with the stone that is in the head of a toad. Also, if anyone shall catch a living frog before sunrise, and he or she spits in the mouth of the frog, will be cured of an asthmatic consumption. Likewise, the right or left eye of the same animal cures blindness, and the fat of a viper cures a bite of the same. Black hellebore easeth the headache, being applied to the head, or the powder snuffed up the nose in a moderate quantity. Coral is a well-known preservative against witchcraft and poisons, which, if worn now in this time as much round children's necks as usual, would enable them to combat many diseases which their tender years are subjected to, and to which, with fascinations, they often fall a victim. I know how to compose coral amulets or talismans, which, if suspended even by a thread, shall, God assisting, prevent all harms and accidents of violence from fire or water or witchcraft, and help them to withstand all their diseases. Paracelsus and Helmont both agree that in the toad, although so irreverent to the sight of man, and so noxious to the touch, and of such strong, violent antipathy to the blood of man, I say out of this hatred divine providence hath prepared us a remedy against manifold diseases most inimical to man's nature. The toad hath a natural aversion to man, and this sealed image or idea of hatred he carries in his head, eyes, and most powerfully throughout his whole body. Now that the toad may be highly prepared for a sympathetic remedy against the plague or other disorders, such as the ague, falling, sicknesses, and various others, and that the terror of us and natural inbred hatred may the more strongly be imprinted and higher ascend in the toad, we must hang him up aloft in the chimney by the legs, and set under him a dish of yellow wax to receive whatsoever may come down or fall from his mouth. Let him hang in this position in our sight for 3 or 4 days, at least till he is dead. Now we must not omit frequently to be present in the fight of the animals, so that his fears or inbred terror of us, with the ideas of strong hatred, may increase even unto death. So you have a most powerful remedy in this one toad for the curing of 40,000 persons infected with the peft or plague. Van Helmont's process for making a preservative amulet against the plague is as follows. In the month of July, in the decrease of the moon, I took old toads, whose eyes abounded with white worms hanging forth into black heads, so that both his eyes were totally formed with worms, perhaps 50 in number, thickly compacted together, their heads hanging out, and as oft as any one of them attempted to get out, the toad, by applying his forefoot, obeyed its utterance. These toads, being hung up and made to vomit in the manner before mentioned, and reduced the insects and other matters ejected from the toad, with the waxen dish being added thereto, and the dried carcass of the toad being reduced into powder, I formed the whole into trotches with gum dragon, which being borne about the left breast, drove speedily away all contagion, and being fast bound to the place affected, thoroughly drew out the poison, and these trotches were more potent after they had returned into use divers times than when new. Into use divers times. Okay. I found them to be a most powerful amulet against the plague, for if the serpent eateth dust all the days of his life, because he was the instrument of sinning, so the toad eats earth, which he vomits up all the days of his life. And according to the adeptical philosophy, the toad bears an hatred to men, so that he infects some herbs that are useful to man with his poison in order for his death. But this difference note between the toad and the serpent. The toad, at the sight of man, from a natural quality sealed in him, called antipathy, conceives a great terror of or astonishment, which terror from a man imprints on this animal a natural efficiency against the images of the affrighted Arceus in man. For truly the terror of the toad kills and annihilates the idea of the frightened Arcus in man, because the terror in the toad is natural, therefore radical. For the poison of the plague is subdued by the poison of the toad, not by the action primarily destructive, but by a secondary action, as the pestilent idea of hatred or terror extinguishes the ferment by whose meditation the poison of the plague subsists and proceeds to infect. For seeing the poison of the plague is the product of the image of the terrified Arceus, established in a fermental, putrefied odor and mumial air. This coupling ferments the appropriate mean, and immediately the subject of the poison is taken away. Therefore, the opposition of the amulet formed from the body, etc., of the toad takes away and prevents the baneful and most horrible effects of the pestilential poison and ferment of the plague. Hence, it is conjectured that he is an animal ordained by God, that the idea of his terror being poisonous indeed to himself should be to us and to our plague a poison and terror, since therefore the toad is most fearful at the beholding of man, which in himself, notwithstanding, forms the terror conceived from man, and also the hatred against man, into an image and active real being, and not consisting only in a confused apprehension. Hence it happens that a poison arises in the toad, which kills the pestilent poison of the terror in man, to wit, from whence the Arceus waxeth strong, he not only perceiving the pestilent idea to be extinguished in himself, but moreover because he knoweth that the something inferior to himself is terrified, dismayed, and doth fly. Again, so great is the fear of the toad, that if he is placed directly before thee, and thou dost behold with an intentive, furious look, so that he cannot avoid thee for a quarter of an hour, he dies, being fascinated with terror and astonishment of the serpent. Hippocrates, by the use of some parts of this animal, attained to himself divine honors, for therewith he cured pestilence and contagion, consumptions, and very many other diseases. For he the cleansed the flesh of a viper, the utmost part of the tail and head being cut off. He stripped off the skin, casting away the bowels and gall. He reserved of the intestines only the heart and liver. He drew out all the blood with the vein running down the backbone. He bruised the flesh and the aforesaid bowels with the bones, and dried them in a warm oven until they could be powdered, which powder he sprinkled on honey, being clarified and boiled until he knew that the fleshes in boiling had cast aside their virtue as well in the broth as in the vapors. He then added unto this electuary the spices of his country to cloak the secret. But this cure of diseases by the serpent contains a great mystery, viz., that as death crept in by the serpent of old, itself ought to be mitigated by the death of the serpent. For Adam, being skillful in the properties of all beasts, was not ignorant also that the serpent was more crafty than other living creatures, and that the aforesaid balsam, the remedy of death, lay hid in the serpent. Wherefore the spirit of darkness could not more safely deceive our first parents than under the guileful serpent's form, for they foolishly imagined they should escape the death so sorely threatened by God by the serpent's aid. Amber is an amulet. A piece of red amber worn about one is a preservative against poisons and the pestilence. Likewise, a sapphire stone is as effectual. Oil of amber, or amber dissolved in pure spirit of wine, comforts the womb being disordered. If a suffumigation of it be made with the warts of the shank of a horse, it will cure many disorders of that region. The liver and gall of an eel, likewise, being gradually dried and reduced to powder, and taken in the quantity of a filbert nut in a glass of warm wine, causes a speedy and safe delivery to women in labor. The liver of a serpent likewise effects the same. Rhubarb, on account of its violent antipathy to choler, wonderfully purges the same. Music is a well-known specific for curing the bite of a tarantula or any venomous spider. Likewise, water cures the hydrophobia. Warts are cured by paring off the same, or by burying as many pebbles secretly as the party has warts. The king's evil may be cured by the heart of a toad worn about the neck, first being dried. Hippomanes excites lust by the bare touch or being suspended on the party. If any one shall spit in the hand with which he struck or hurt another, so shall the wound be cured. Likewise, if any one shall draw the halter wherewith a malefactor was slain across the throat of one who hath the quinsy, it certainly cures him in 3 days. Also, the herb cinquefoil being gathered before sunrise, one leaf thereof cures the ague of the day. 3 leaves cures the tartan, and 4 the quatrin ague. Rape seeds sown with cursings and imprecations grows the fairer and thrives, but if with praises the reverse. The juice of deadly nightshade, distilled and given in a proportionate quantity, makes the party imagine almost whatever you choose. The herb nip being heated in the hand, and afterwards you hold in your hand the hand of any other party, they shall never quit you so long as you retain that herb. The herbs are smart, comfrey, flaxweed, dragonwort, adder's tongue, being steeped in cold water, and if for some time being applied on a wound or ulcer, they grow warm and are buried in a muddy place, cureth the wound or sore to which they were applied. Again, if anyone pluck the leaves of Asarabaca, drawing them upwards, they will purge another who is ignorant of the drawing by vomit only. But if they are rested downward to the earth, they purge by stool. A sapphire or a stone that is of a deep blue color, if it be rubbed on a tumor, where when the plague discovers itself before the party is too far gone, and by it is removed from the sick, the absent jewel attracts all the poison or contagion therefrom. And thus much is sufficient to be said concerning natural occult virtues, whereof we speak in a mixed and miscellaneous manner, coming to more distinct heads anon. All right, then.